Obviously, we'll start just off of a bye week, which is everybody asks, is it a good time for a bye week? And you can always make it a good time. And I think more than anything, that's what we had to do, was make it a good time for a bye week. Focus on the things we had to be able to do. Some of that is health. Some of that is a little bit of rest. And I don't mean resting your body sometimes. It's even resting your minds. And so our guys were able to keep a schedule on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, be able to get them out of here a little bit on Fridays and things like that, and Saturday, and then come back in here and roll on Sunday. But it is what it is. We know we've got 1 month left guaranteed to us, and the most important thing is how do we focus on that month, and what are the things that we can do to continue to push forward and keep scratching, clawing, growing in all areas. And so it's unique in what we're going through, but it's not something that's not going to mean a hell of a lot to us, not just as a program and a team, but to each of us individually on how we go forward in whether it's the game of football or the game of life. And so, again, good week to be able to get away a little bit. There are maybe a few updates, and I don't know a ton, but over the bye week with some of the guys, there were some surgeries probably to end guys' seasons. And so I would imagine that guys know Dylan Jones would be done for the year with he had his foot, toe, with like the turf toe thing repaired. Matt Trainer tore his ACL, and he had surgery to, he'll be done for the season. And then Jake Renfro had surgery, and he'll be out for the rest of the season as well. So just a few of those updates. There's, maybe some other things, but I'm sure you guys will ask about them. There's a lot of things we still don't know even after a week. We'll go out there today and tomorrow and see what we've got and see who's able to go. There's some guys that are obviously going to be very limited, but as we get closer to the weekend, we'll have a better grasp on what those guys can do and what the expectations are. But it's all hands on deck, and a lot of guys that young guys in particular, they're going to have a lot more opportunities in this last month.
Have you made a decision, or do you know if you're going to make a change at quarterback, or what that situation looks like going into this week?
Again, we'll go out there today kind of seeing where we are. Over the bye week, there's a lot of things that we did, trying to focus in on the things that we can do to get better. And I don't know if there's an exact, and we don't know exactly where we are right now. We got to go through the week and figure out what that is. So there's a lot of variables still to what we're doing at that position in particular.
Luke, is Carter Smith a possibility?
Yeah, Carter Smith's in the mix, so to speak. After a bye week, we got him out there, got some more opportunities for him, and then that's one of those things we'll just have to see. So there's a lot of chances for a lot of guys, but Carter is definitely one of them. And I don't mean that a bye week you get some opportunities to rep younger guys in particular. He was one of them. It wasn't a bye week where we would naturally do a lot of, threes on threes, and a lot of our threes are playing some significant roles, or so to speak, we're threes or the younger guys. And a lot of those guys are of incredible special teams value. So it was hard to, kind of do even some live it up situations with those guys. But Carter got more reps than he would with just going in there with the threes.
Luke, sticking with Carter, I'm curious if there is a balance in terms of, I'm sure part of you wants to know what you have in him because it helps you plan for the future and the off season, and yet I'm sure you want him to be ready. Is that how do you balance that?
I don't. There's not an exact to that. I don't think you just throw him out there to see what you have, but you got to prepare him and put him in a situation that if you need him, you got to roll. And if you need him, you'll find out a lot more about what you really have for the future and moving forward. Otherwise, you're gonna spend a lot of time trying to figure out what you have for the future based on preparation, based on maturity of how he handles things. But it's not far-fetched to think that there isn't going to be a role and an opportunity for him if it's not this week, here in the near future.
Luke, can you talk about those variables for the quarterback? Like, what are some of the things that you need to see in these weeks of preparation to decide?
Well, it still comes down to what gives us the best chance to win football games, to move the football, to score points. Some of that has to do with the health of the people that are around them and what gives us the best chance and the best opportunity. And that's where it's been tough, right? I mean, it's hard to really evaluate it's easy to evaluate. You can look at the numbers, but it's hard for me to evaluate deeply on where we are offensively and what it could look like and should look like, just with the sheer fact that there hasn't been a consistent starting lineup. There hasn't been anything that what we saw in the spring and in the fall. So a lot of that is just there's the variables at each and every week that you're trying to piece together, put together what gives you the best chance. And unfortunately, it's what gives you the best chance each week. And that's not a great way to continue to grow, but that's what we've had to do.
Luke, you had mentioned after the last game, Cooper Catalano and Mason Posa were the future. What have they shown you to this point, and how important do you think it is to have true freshmen, especially the last couple of recruiting classes, show something early on for the future?
Well, it's definitely important. It's what some of that, when you see the hope and you see what the future looks like, and some of them are put in situations where, you don't know if they're ready. But they went out there 2 weeks ago at Oregon, and it wasn't too big for them. And that's where you see, and we got an opportunity to see that, that there's a growth, and they have to continue to, grow. And there's another challenge to them too now. It's being in the position that's not new. Now, how do you step forward, and how do you continue to handle that situation? But it's not, I don't know if it's something we envisioned as we started the season, but it's always something that there are, that you got to be prepared and ready for. And those are just two of the guys that, that maybe are, have a much larger role in these last month or so, whether it's, Eugene Hilton as well, and, whether Carter Smith gets that opportunity too. There's a lot of these guys that, this isn't a trial period, but are going to be forced into some, some serious, real playing time that a lot of people are going to be counting on.
Let's say, Luke, just with you talking about some of the younger players, answer earlier, just any of them stand out to you during those practices that could warrant even further looks?
No, there's a lot of guys who are going to get opportunities. You saw last week with Gideon. He was thrust into a position that he hadn't probably been in. Whether it was, late in the game against the week before against Ohio State, but he was put in a position where, he's kind of the main guy. And so I don't know that there's any in particular. Like you said, there's a plan. As this season has unfolded, the plan has had to be adjusted quite often, and even in game situations. So, a couple weeks ago, it wasn't a plan for Mason Posa to be playing a whole lot of will linebacker, but then what happened with Christian, he was thrust into those situations. So that's kind of what the bye week gave us a chance to do, is to prepare some of these guys, not knowing, just based on how the season has gone, but put them in some positions that, when their number is called, they know they've got to be ready and accountable.
This isn't about any specific person or school, but it's for a national feature a colleague's doing. And as a few coaching moves have already been made, there's been a lot of talk about the high buyouts and coaching contracts. Why do you think it has gotten to that point, and just how much tougher is the job now in this landscape than 5 years ago?
The job's always been hard. I'm not one to sit here and complain about how hard the job is. And when you're struggling, it's a lot easier to say the job's really hard. But the truth of the matter is, I think the game or the landscape has, as we all know, has changed. And whatever that means to everybody around the country is what it means. I don't think it means the same thing to everybody, as you can see here, right? It doesn't mean the same thing as maybe it does in some other schools. And for me, that's a good thing. I don't know that that's what everybody would want to see. But the truth of the matter is when you know what you stand for, you got a better chance to not just, fall into the ways of what everybody else does. And so has that helped changed a little bit of our landscape of college football? I think it has. Has it become a little bit closer to what you see at the next level? I think it is. And I think that on both parts with the business side of things. There are some definite things I would imagine you'll see different in college football landscape over the next few years, when it regards to coaches. What that is, I'm not saying, but I would guess whatever that landscape looks like at the next level is probably going to be a little bit closer to what that'll look like at the college level as well. And there probably just isn't as much time in some places and as much leeway in some places. But who am I to say? Like I said, I'm focused on, the good thing is we here, know what it is that we believe in, and are hopefully going to be swayed by, what is better for everybody else.
Coach, you mentioned Gideon Atuka. Where does the health of the running back room stand? And even if Yak and Darion are healthy, did Atuka earn more reps?
Oh, he did. He did. And as where it stands now, I don't know. I mean, obviously Gideon, good thing I can say is he came out healthy from the last game. Cade did not make it through the last game. We'll see where he is. It went from a pretty deep room to a really, really thin room pretty quick. And at that position, that can happen. But it's not nonetheless, even if those guys were back, I don't know that you would say that Gideon hasn't earned the opportunity and the right to kind of be the guy that steps out there to start the whole thing off. And he's done a really good job, and he'll have to continue to grow. And, again, that's another one of those things when all of a sudden put in this situation, it's a little bit different. And that's where his growth will be important for all of us. Sometimes you just get thrust in there not expecting to be the guy to, carry the load when you are expected to be the guy to carry the load. There are some things that are a little bit different.
Speaking of young guys, Emerson Mandel at right tackle, especially these last couple games, has he kind of maybe taken some steps forward, and kind of what stands out to you about him during that run?
Yeah, I think the first thing about Emerson is he's taken every single rep of the season. And he hasn't. I don't think he's missed a rep. I mean, maybe early in the year, maybe at the end of a game, he went out. Every week in practice, he's a guy because he's a redshirt freshman that you're like he needs every single rep he can get. So there has been a great growth. Obviously we moved him from guard where he played most of fall camp to tackle after game 1, and that has taken some growth as well. We've mixed around the people that have played inside him. Being the right guard in particular. So that has been another one of those things. It's not the easiest thing in the world, especially for a young guy. But he has. He's matured. He's come along a long way. He's got an incredibly bright future. And we just need him to continue to do what he's done and continue to grow, in particular in these last few weeks, because he's going to be really important to us.
Turnovers in terms of forcing them has obviously been a shortcoming for you guys. Kind of what do you attribute that to, and is there anything you can do to
I wish I knew. There's a violence to the game where turnovers are created, and that's got to be something that that we look at. It's not that we don't start every practice off with a turnover circuit. It's not that we did put an enormous amount of focus on it. We haven't gotten them, and I don't know why. Other than we've had some in our hands that obviously you got to capitalize on. I think last week in particular, we had a few of them. There were a few balls that were on the ground that we didn't get. That that comes a lot down to population to the ball, and there's an effort level there. But it's probably as much of an Achilles heel to what we've done defensively as anything. And I wish I could say I knew exactly what it was. It's really tough to be a good defense, let alone a great defense, if you can't find ways to create turnovers, because the game, people are going to move the football, and if you can't find ways to take it away and capitalize on those things, it's really tough to be successful.
Luke, one more quarterback question for you.
Yep.
Based on where things stand, is it realistic in your mind that we could see Billy at any point this last month? And if he can't, is a potential medical redshirt on the table? Or where are you at on that process?
I don't know, to be honest with you. There's a lot of variables of those things. I don't even know where the NCAA is on a lot of those things too. I mean, I think it's going to be more and more difficult in some of those situations. But again, if Billy can go, I have every means to say let's play him. It's really going to come down to what he can and can't do, and am I hopeful that we see Billy play the last 4 games of the season? Yes. Would I be the last 3? Yes. Would it be the last 2? Yes. Would it be even the last 1? Yeah. But I just don't know where that is, and that's what's been as much of a struggle for us to continue to grow as anything. It's just there's not a cut and dry to sometimes injuries, and especially the one that he has.
I'm going to stick with quarterback. Sorry. When Billy got hurt in the opener, you said that with this new offense, you would hope that position you wouldn't be so reliant on that position. Was that a miscalculation, or when you look at kind of what's happened around that position, did that change the calculus?
No, I mean that was the idea. When you can lean upon the offensive line, I think that's where you were really kind of talking about that, is you were, a little bit more in depth into the run game, as opposed to where we were in the past, where and the idea of it was the run game is a little bit more simplified, and then when you have to really rely upon it, there's not as much variation as to where we are offensively now. The idea was there's more variation in the run game, more variety in the run game, more creativity in the run game. In some ways, that still puts a lot more pressure on the guys up front and your ability to run the football. And so twofold for us, we've been put in a situation where, we haven't had our starting quarterback, and we've had to try to grow through those things, along with, even more so where we've been with the offensive line this year. It is probably something that's even been a little bit more of a Achilles heel than the quarterback position, if you really kind of look at the grand scheme and how we really are kind of building to be successful.
I got another one. You mentioned after Oregon that you needed Danny O'Neill to be with you guys and to stay engaged. Was that something that maybe was a concern, or something that you were worried about? Or
no, it's always right. I mean, like, guys that are competitors, when your number's not called, when you don't get as many opportunities, and when things aren't going well, boy, it makes it a heck of a lot more difficult, to grow. And at that position, I mean, every day is a growing day, and every day that there's not a growth, that there's going the other direction. And so any younger guy, any guy in a position where he's not getting a chance to play as much, we talk about with some of the, Gideon Ituka, like, the difference now is all of a sudden he's thrown in a position where, maybe he's the guy that's being counted on to carry the load, as opposed to just getting thrown in. So there's a difference in the way that which you prepare and the things you have to be able to do. And I don't think it was pointing a finger at Danny of any sorts, just any young guy that's going to be counted on. In the way things have gone this year, everybody at some point in time is going to be counted on in these last few weeks, and you just don't know when and who.
I know you talked about the health of the offensive line in one of the questions, but I just noticed in the availability report from the Oregon game that, I mean, it's been that way throughout the season with Barrett and Kevin. Just wondering about their status updates in terms of I know, especially with the injury with Kevin had, I know it's hard to even think about, but where are they at?
No, I don't think those guys are in a thought process of being available. I don't know if they go any deeper. I mean, they're whether they could or couldn't, I don't know. But you're getting in a position where like I've said before, you got to save them from themselves too.
Preston Zachman, he's been out for quite a while. Two-parter. One, do you think are you expecting that he'll be back this year? And then two, I know it's kind of speculative, but what do you miss when you don't have a guy like that for 6-7 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, he was the leader of the defense. He was, making most of all the calls and the things, and just that corner piece to what you were doing. And so it's been, it's been trying. It's been one of those things that we've had to be able to overcome, and had to spread out some of that, the last 7 weeks. Will we get him back? I don't know. I mean, I think he's doing more. He's feeling better. I don't know exactly where he'll be and when, if available, when he'll be able to be able to play. I'm hopeful at some point in time here, but I just don't know when. And that's kind of, you hope you get a lot of those things through a bye week, but that's not just one that you can count on. There's a little bit like Billy. There's some feel to the things that's got to happen, and so we just don't know where that is. But it's been another one of those that defensively, like your quarterback on offense, it has been really kind of hard to fill in for. You just, when you miss that leadership and things like that, it's not just something you can, you put a guy in there to play the position and he can play it well, but there's another piece that of some consistency and some confidence that it's hard to fill in for.
you guys have played a lot of mobile quarterbacks throughout this season and in years past, but this is a different situation maybe where they want to run him more than maybe other teams that just like use that as a bonus. How much of a stress or how much challenging is that for defense when he's as involved in every play as he is?
I would say that they're where they are in a lot of ways is because of their quarterback and his ability to make plays, but not just with his feet, with his arm. And there's a lot of things that the confidence is built around what it is that he can do and how he can do it. And I think you've seen their defense play a heck of a lot better because of what they've been able to do offensively as well. And so he is a very talented quarterback, even at a younger age, and you can see the growth from week one to where he is now. And it's very trying. There's a lot of things that you got to be accountable for, and him not just called runs, but him in creating and extending plays, and he is very dynamic in a lot of things. And so it's going to be a different challenge, but nonetheless a real challenge.
Hey, Coach, I know you'd probably like to take it a week at a time, but with the season winding down as we officially hit November, what are some of the things you're still really optimistic about and excited for this season and the foreseeable future?
Well, it's all of us about our ability to continue to push and scratch and claw. Like, nobody's where they want to be, and everybody recognizes what the mountain still looks like. But our ability to stay together, our ability to compete and play and play your best ball at the end of the season is still what we have to be able to do. That ball hasn't looked great at times, but it's got to get better, and it's got to look better. And that's where you're starting to say, you don't want to sit here and say, like, we're excited about the young guys, and we're excited. Like, the truth of the matter is we're excited about every guy. Everybody has something to play for, and we keep reminding ourselves of that, whether it's the senior guy that, wants to go play at the next level or the younger guy that knows that there's a building process to what it is that we're doing. What we're hopeful, like, we want to see guys finish. We want to see this locker room stay together. We want to see these guys continue to compete and find ways to make us successful. And that's what's hard, right? I mean, everybody gets, fixated on just winning football games, and that's our goal and that's our job. But there's a lot more to what we have to be able to do going down the stretch that is vitally important, right? I mean, it's a good question, but if there's one thing that I think I got a chance to see watching a little bit of football this weekend is when things aren't going well, it's hard on everybody. And you can see the emotions just across the sport, right? Whether it's watching college football or the NFL football. And I feel the same way. When things aren't going well, your ability to, lose your emotions and maybe out of character, that's what we can't do. Are we still coaching? Are Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays going to be a grind of getting after guys and coaching them hard on the practice field? Yeah, but Saturdays has still got to be about a growth, and we can't lose our minds to the things that are happening because there's a growth to this that it's slight, and internally we are seeing a growth. It's a little bit harder to see externally, and sometimes when you get to those game days in particular, the emotions start to run so high that we get a lot of things that are out of character. And so for me in particular, and for our players, we've got to make sure that we're prepared for what we need to be able to do so that we can go out there and compete and play.
Luke, you obviously have a lot on your plate here these next 4 weeks, but the early signing period is a month away now. Without naming specifics, several players have taken visits to other schools. Do you consider guys who are visiting elsewhere to be committed to Wisconsin, and do you think this last month will sort of be a race to the finish?
This can be a loaded question. There's guys that you understand that, they've got to make sure they protect themselves, I guess, in some ways. We look at everybody as a guy until they sign the papers is not yet committed. And that's just the truth of it, right? I mean, you got to build relationships, but there's a lot of things that swirl out there, and there's a lot of things that guys don't always know exactly what it's going to look like. And so some of those are situations where, guys have communicated with you, guys talk with you about what they're doing and needing to do, and I think there's a little bit of those things are on an individual basis. We know we got to be able to finish, and we know we got to be able to secure it and sign those guys come December. And those are two things that we are working on and dealing with every single day. Whether we feel like they are committed or not, until a guy is signed or has ever been signed, you're always in the midst to say, look, man, we've got to continue to build this relationship, and they got to know what it is that we are all about, no matter whether it looks really good or, it's been very difficult. And, we're prepared for that.
Going along the same lines with recruiting, did you get a chance? I know obviously you can't talk about anybody by name or anything like that, but during the bye week, were you able to give a message to those commits and whatnot?
We've done a lot of that. Obviously, in where we are and the noise that's out there, you have to do a great job of communicating with these guys. You got to do a great job of communicating with your own guys. You got to do a great job of communicating with your own guys and sometimes even their families, just with the landscape of where college football, you've asked about where the landscape of college football is, right? They can hear things and they don't know what to believe. So there's an enormous amount of time spent in doing those things, and it's important, and so, yeah, even this weekend of having a chance to be able to get out and be able to see guys and get face-to-face and a little bit of the things that you're allowed to be able to do, it was important for me and for all of our coaches, and that's not something that's going to change in the next month until that signing day happens. But, that's not anything that's abnormal from college football. It's just maybe a little bit different in today's world.